This is the Podcast Lab. Subscribe now and never miss an episode.
You've really outdone yourself this time. YouTube videos, articles, and this is not a lecture transcript. Global economic trends and personal finance. Looks like you're really digging deep to see how the world impacts your wallet.
It's a smart move, to be honest. A lot of people don't make that connection.
Yeah, so where do we even begin with all this? I'm seeing tech innovation, geopolitics, a whole lot to unpack.
It is, yeah, but I think we can break it down. It seems like there's this recurring theme of tech innovation being a double-edged sword. Like that article that mentioned innovationq.ca credit union. They're helping people whose jobs are affected by automation. Pretty interesting, huh?
It's kind of crazy to think about. We get all these amazing new gadgets, but then certain jobs become obsolete. It makes you wonder what skills we'll need in the future. Like, what if MY job is next?
That's the big question, isn't it? Yeah. It really highlights the need to be adaptable and always keep learning new skills. And speaking of things that are impacting the global economy, there's a lot about geopolitics too. Trade wars, political instability. One expert even called it a global game of chess with consequences that impact the whole world.
Yeah, one article mentioned how a trade dispute between two countries could disrupt, global supply chains, and then that leads to shortages and prices going up everywhere. Kind of a butterfly effect, but on a global scale.
Exactly, and it's not just the big countries either. Even small events can have far-reaching consequences. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of sustainability. It's becoming a major economic force.
Right, and it's not just about being eco-friendly anymore. It's a total shift. Like one source talked about how this move towards green technologies is impacting everything from energy to agriculture, even creating whole new job sectors.
Definitely an area to watch both for jobs and investment potential. And while we're talking about these big changes, we can't forget about demographics, especially aging populations.
One of those lecture transcripts went deep on this, explaining how an aging population impacts things like, healthcare, pensions, government budgets. It really got me thinking about the long-term implications for things like Social Security and planning for retirement.
Absolutely. Those demographic shifts have effects across the entire economy. And it's not just about supporting an older population, but also thinking about who's going to fill those jobs and drive innovation in the future.
Okay, so we've got this big web of global factors, but how does it actually hit our wallets? I see a lot here about inflation, and honestly, that's what I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, that's a valid concern for sure. Inflation's like this silent thief stealing your purchasing power. Remember you were talking about that trip to Europe? Well, a strong euro can make things pricey, but a weak dollar might be time to book that flight.
I like the way you think. But seriously, with prices going up on everything, it feels like my paycheck isn't going as far as it used to.
That's the real impact of inflation. And, that Indiana Daily Student article had a great example. If inflation's at 5%, but your salary only goes up 2%, you're technically making more money, but losing purchasing power.
Ouch. Yeah, that puts it into perspective. So what can we do? Just hope for the best.
Not exactly. It's important to stay informed about inflation and factor it into your financial planning. Negotiating salary increases, exploring other income sources, making smart investments. Those can all help.
Speaking of investments, what about interest rates? They seem to be all over the news these days. What's the deal with those?
Well, interest rates, they're a powerful tool that central banks use to influence borrowing, saving, and investing. They can impact everything from your mortgage to the returns on your savings account.
So if interest rates are low, it's cheaper to borrow money, but then our savings accounts earn less. And if rates are high, it's more expensive to borrow, but our savings go faster. Did I get that right?
Yeah. That's a good starting point, but it goes a bit deeper than that. Low interest rates can push people towards riskier investments like stocks, to get those higher returns. And then high interest rates can make bonds more attractive because they offer a more predictable return. It's all about finding the right balance for your own risk tolerance and your financial goals.
Okay, so interest rates are a little more complex than I thought. It's like this balancing act where you have to weigh the pros and cons depending on your situation. There's another piece of this puzzle I'm trying to figure out, these economic cycles everyone's always talking about.
Ah, yes, the economic roller coaster. It's important to remember that economies don't move in a straight line. They go through phases: expansion, peak contraction, or recession, and then the trough. Knowing where we are in that cycle can really help with financial decisions.
So during an expansion, there are lots of jobs, and it's a good time to invest right. But during a recession, things get tough. Jobs are lost, harder to get loans.
Exactly. And that's why one of the sources emphasized saving during those good times, building that financial cushion for when the downturn hits. That cushion can really give you peace of mind and flexibility during those tough times.
I'm picturing a squirrel burying nuts for winter makes sense. But wait, one article mentioned that recessions can be a good time to invest. How does that work?
It might seem counterintuitive, but think of it this way. When prices are lower during a recession, it's kind of like a sale on your financial future. If you have the resources and you're comfortable with risk, recessions can actually be a good time to buy low and then potentially benefit when the market recovers.
Okay, that's a new way to look at it. How do we even know where we are in the cycle, though? Is there like a giant sign somewhere?
I wish it were that easy, unfortunately. Economists use all sorts of indicators to track economic activity, but even they don't always get it right. It's more about understanding those broader trends and making informed decisions based on your own situation and risk tolerance.
So it's not about timing the market perfectly, but being prepared for different scenarios and making smart choices along the way. But even with all this knowledge, the global economy can still feel pretty unpredictable. What can we do to actually ride out those waves of instability?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Well, we can't predict the future, but we can prepare for it. Building an emergency fund, aiming for, 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up, that's a great place to start.
That makes sense, kind of like an insurance policy for your finances. But what about income? What if I lose my job?
That's where the idea of multiple income streams comes in. Think side hustles, freelancing, passive income from investments. Diversifying your income can give you that safety net if one source dries up.
One source even mentioned that the gig economy is changing how we think about work, creating more flexibility and opportunities for entrepreneurship.
It's a trend that's likely to stick around, offering both challenges and opportunities for those who are willing to adapt. And speaking of spreading risk, let's talk about investments. One article really emphasized the importance of diversification.
Yeah, the On Point article was all about not putting all your eggs in one basket. They recommend spreading investments across different things like stocks, bonds, real estate, and commodities as a hedge against inflation.
It's a fundamental principle of investing.
Yeah.
Diversification can help lower risk and maybe even improve returns over time. And while we're talking about financial strategies, there was another point that kept coming up, debt management.
Right. Basically, everyone said to avoid high-interest debt like the plague and pay it down as quickly as possible.
Especially when things are uncertain, having a manageable debt load can give you more financial flexibility and peace of mind. So we've covered inflation, interest rates, economic cycles, and some basic strategies for building financial resilience. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about one of the most fascinating and influential players in the global economy, China.
Yeah, I'm really interested in China's economic model. It seems like such a unique mix of government control and this booming entrepreneurship. The CKGSB video called it lasagna layers, which I thought was a pretty clever way to put it. What does that actually mean, though?
It's a great visual for how complex the Chinese economy is.
Yeah.
Think about it. You have this authoritarian government setting the overall direction, but within that, you got layers of entrepreneurship, family businesses, village enterprises, and this long history of trade that's driving so much economic activity.
One expert pointed out that these factors, especially the emphasis on trade and entrepreneurship, were missing in other communist systems like the former Soviet Union. It's interesting how history and culture play such a big role in shaping economic development.
Yeah, it reminds us that economics isn't just about numbers and stats. It's about people, their motivations, their history and culture. And speaking of cultural influences, one expert brought up a really interesting point. He said that while China has huge economic power, their cultural exports haven't been as successful. They wondered if a country can really be a global superpower without a strong cultural presence on the world stage.
That's a good point. It makes you wonder how cultural influence and economic power are connected. But getting back to how this impacts us, what should we be paying attention to when it comes to China's economy?
One key takeaway is that China's growth is shifting, from cheap manufacturing to a focus on technology and high-end consumption. Think fashion, music, cutting-edge tech. It's a whole new game.
And the CKGSB video highlighted the rise of entrepreneurs in China. Salaries for traditional jobs are going down, so people are creating their own opportunities, and that's adding even more energy to the economy.
Definitely a trend to watch, especially as Chinese entrepreneurs look for new markets and investment opportunities.
So it's not just about understanding China on its own, but how their economic decisions and their entrepreneurs impact the global landscape and ultimately our own financial lives.
Exactly. And that brings us to the big question. How does China fit into the overall picture?
Well, it seems like their role is changing fast, especially with concerns about trade practices and this rise of protectionism. What does protectionism actually mean, though?
In simple terms, it's about policies that restrict international trade to protect domestic industries, things like tariffs, quotas, and other barriers to trade. The debate now is whether China will keep integrating into the global system or become more inward-looking, favoring their own market.
The 5-year outlook is anyone's guess, so there's a lot of uncertainty. But one thing's for sure, China's decisions will have a massive impact on the global economy. It's like this giant economic puzzle that we're all trying to solve.
And that's why it's so important to stay informed about global trends, including those in China, to make good decisions about your own finances. It's not just about following the headlines, but understanding those underlying forces at play and how they could impact your life.
This has been really helpful in connecting those dots between global trends and my own finances, but I gotta admit, it's a little overwhelming too. So much information to process.
It can definitely feel that way, but that's why we're here to help you break it down and make sense of it all. Remember, you don't have to be an economics whiz to make smart financial decisions.
That's reassuring to hear. So we've covered the global economic landscape, inflation, interest rates, strategies for navigating instability, even delved into China's economic puzzle. What's next on our agenda?
Well, we've laid the groundwork, but now it's time to get more specific. Let's explore the real-world consequences of these global trends with some case studies that really show their impact.
Sounds good to me. Let's dive in.
Let's go back in time for a second, back to 2008. Remember that year? The year the financial world kind of stood still. The housing bubble burst, and it triggered this chain reaction that shook the global economy, to its core.
One of the sources of video from the Wall Street Journal called it the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of '83. It's hard to imagine the panic people must have felt.
It was a real wake-up call. Even seemingly stable systems, they can be vulnerable to collapse. In that same video, Warren Buffett compared the American economy to a train that sometimes goes off the rails. He said that the housing bubble created this illusion of endless growth, like everyone was partying until the music stopped.
And then it all came crashing down. The source mentioned something like 50 million people had mortgages at the time, and when the bubble burst, it hit about 40% of U.S. households. What were the lasting effects of that crisis on personal finance?
The 2008 crisis really drove home the importance of being financially prepared. It forced people to realize that even investments that seem safe can lose value. Having an emergency fund and a diversified portfolio is so important for getting through those economic storms.
The video also talked about how the government responded, and Warren Buffett said that the U.S. government had to do the right things starting in September, and they did a fantastic job, actually, of getting the train back on the tracks.
Absolutely. That quick action was key to preventing a total meltdown.
Yeah.
But the effects of the crisis, they were deep, and it took years for confidence to fully come back. That 2008 crisis really showed how interconnected the global economy is and how events that seem isolated can have ripple effects everywhere.
Speaking of those ripple effects, let's jump ahead to a more recent event that shook things up, the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, it was a public health crisis first, but the economic fallout was huge too.
Absolutely. The pandemic forced us to change how we workshop and interact with the world almost overnight. It accelerated trends like online shopping and working from home, but it also disrupted global supply chains and really hurt industries like travel, hospitality, entertainment.
One of the YouTube sources, Mindful Money Matters, pointed out how the pandemic created both winners and losers, economically speaking. Certain industries like pharmaceuticals and online retailers, they thrived, while others, like brick and mortar stores and traditional transportation, really struggled.
It's a reminder of how things outside our control can reshape the economy, and why it's so important to be adaptable and resilient. The pandemic was like a crash course in dealing with uncertainty and finding ways to adapt and innovate when things get tough.
The pandemic also seems to have played a role in this global inflation surge we've been seeing. Prices on everything are going up, and it's really putting a strain on household budgets.
Yeah, the pandemic definitely contributed to inflation, but it's not the only factor. Things like supply chain problems, increased demand as economies reopened, and government stimulus measures have all pushed prices higher.
And then there's the whole thing with central banks raising interest rates to try to control inflation. The Indiana Daily Student article talked about how this is like walking a tightrope, trying to cool things down without causing a recession.
It's a tough position for central banks to be in. Their decisions have a huge impact on global markets and everyone's personal finances. It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
It feels like we're living in a time of crazy economic uncertainty. So what can we do to protect ourselves and maybe even thrive in this environment?
One strategy we've talked about is diversification. It's crucial for investments, but it's also important for your income streams. That mindful money matters source really emphasized that.
They talked about how having multiple income streams is like a safety net if you lose one source of income. So side hustles, freelancing, passive income are those things we should be thinking about.
Absolutely. The gig economy has so many opportunities to create those multiple income streams and build that financial resilience. It's not just about having a plan B, it's about having multiple plans in place so you're ready for anything.
Another source on point talked about being proactive with financial planning. They emphasized setting clear financial goals, tracking expenses, building that emergency fund.
Proactive planning is so important for navigating tough economic times. They also mentioned seeking advice from financial advisors, which I think is smart if you're feeling overwhelmed by managing your finances.
It's like going to the doctor for a checkup. Sometimes you need a professional to assess your financial health and create a plan to reach your goals. So we're not just passengers on this economic roller coaster, we're taking control and steering the ship.
Exactly. And by staying informed, being adaptable and proactive, we can navigate even the most turbulent economic waters.
Okay, so we've talked about the impact of these global events on personal finances and explored some strategies for dealing with the ups and downs. But what about the bigger picture? Where's the world economy headed?
The million-dollar question. It's impossible to predict the future, but we can look for clues in current trends and, historical patterns. One theme that keeps popping up is this shift in global economic power.
You mean the rise of Asia, especially China, as a major economic force? We talk about China's economic model, but how will their continued growth impact the rest of the world?
That's the question everyone's trying to answer. China's growing economic power is undeniable, and their influence is being felt everywhere. One source even mentioned China's Belt and Road Initiative, this huge infrastructure project that could completely reshape global trade routes and economic alliances.
So it's not just about economic power, but geopolitical influence too.
Exactly. The world is becoming more multipolar power. Power is shifting away from those traditional Western centers. How this shift will impact global governance and cooperation. That's the big question mark.
It feels like we're entering uncharted territory. What else should we be paying attention to as we look ahead?
Another key trend is the speed of technological change. We've talked about automation and AI, but those are just the beginning.
The On Point article highlighted things like blockchain, quantum computing, and biotechnology. They painted this picture of a future where entire industries could be transformed.
These innovations have the potential to revolutionize everything, from healthcare to manufacturing to finance. It's almost like a new industrial revolution, but just like past revolutions, this one will bring both progress and disruption.
So how can we prepare for this rapidly changing technological landscape? What skills will be in demand in this tech-driven future?
Adaptability and lifelong learning are more crucial than ever. The old model of working for one company your whole life is becoming a thing of the past. The future of work is probably going to be more fluid, with people switching jobs, industries, even countries more often.
One source even suggested that we see this as an opportunity for personal growth and exploration instead of a threat.
Exactly. It's about embracing change and seeing it as a chance to learn new things and discover new passions. And it's not just about technical skills, but also soft skills like critical thinking, communication, and collaboration.
These are the skills that will help us navigate a world where technology is constantly changing the rules of the game.
And they're also the skills that will help us deal with the increasingly complex ethical and social implications of these technologies. As these technologies become more powerful, we need to think carefully about how we want to use them and what kind of future we're creating.
So it's not just about understanding the tech stuff, but also having thoughtful conversations about their impact on society and making sure they're developed in a way that benefits everyone.
Absolutely. We need to have these conversations now before these technologies are so ingrained in our lives that it's too late to make changes. The choices we make today will determine the kind of world we live in tomorrow.
Okay, so we've talked about the shift in global economic power and the accelerating pace of technology. What other long-term trends are shaping the future of the global economy?
Well, another big trend is how interconnected the world is becoming what we call globalization. We've touched on this already, but it's only going to get stronger in the coming years.
One of the sources talked about the rise of global supply chains and how financial markets are becoming more integrated. But as we saw with the pandemic, this interconnectedness also makes us more vulnerable.
Exactly. Disruptions in one part of the world can quickly spread across borders, which means we need to build more resilient systems.
So what does resilience actually look like in a globalized world? Can we even be truly resilient when everything is so connected?
It means having diverse supply chains, strong financial institutions, and reliable social safety nets. It also means working together internationally, recognizing that we're all in this together.
The challenges we face today, like climate change, pandemics, economic instability, they're global challenges that need global solutions.
Right.
It seems like we need to shift our thinking from me to we, recognizing our shared fate and working together for the common good.
Exactly. We need to acknowledge our interconnectedness and work together to build a more sustainable and equitable future for everyone. And that brings us to another trend that's becoming more and more important, sustainability.
You mean addressing climate change and other environmental challenges?
Climate change isn't a far-off threat anymore. It's happening now, and it's having real economic consequences. One source talked about the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events like hurricanes, floods, and droughts. These events cause billions of dollars in damage, disrupt supply chains, and displace millions of people.
And the longer we wait to deal with this, the more it's going to cost. It seems like there's a growing realization that we need to act now.
Yes, and we're seeing more focus on sustainable investing and the transition to a low-carbon economy. One of the YouTube sources even highlighted ESG investing, environmental, social, and governance, which takes those factors into account when making investment decisions.
So it's not just about doing good, but also about making smart investments.
Absolutely. Sustainability is becoming a key driver of innovation and economic growth. Companies that are leading the way in sustainability are often the ones that are best positioned for long-term success.
It's good to see that sustainability isn't just a niche thing anymore. It's becoming mainstream.
It's definitely a positive development. We need everyone to work together to address climate change and create a more sustainable future.
Okay, so we've talked about the shift in global economic power, the fast pace of technological change, the increasing interconnectedness of the world, and the growing importance of sustainability. What other long-term trends should we have on our radar?
Another big one is the changing nature of work. We've talked about the impact of automation and AI, but it's worth emphasizing how much this is changing the future of work.
The Indiana Daily Student article talked about how technology is automating those routine tasks, which is leading to job losses in some areas. But they also said that new opportunities are emerging in things like data science, software development, and cybersecurity.
Right. The demand for people with those skills is exploding, which means we need to keep learning and upgrading our skills. We have to be proactive about developing the skills that will be in demand in this rapidly changing job market.
It's not about robots taking our jobs. It's about adapting to the changing demands of the workforce and embracing lifelong learning as a way to stay ahead of the curve.
That's a great way to put it. And this leads us to another trend that's affecting economies worldwide, the rise of inequality.
You mean the gap between the rich and the poor? I've read a lot about how that's becoming a major problem.
One source even mentioned that the richest 1% of the world's population now owns more than half of the world's wealth, which is a pretty shocking statistic that shows how wealth is becoming concentrated in the hands of a few. Trends like globalization and technological change have made this problem worse.
Globalization has created both winners and losers, and technological change has often benefited those who have the skills and resources to adapt. But what does this growing inequality mean for us? Is it just a moral issue, or does it have economic consequences too?
It's both, actually. Rising inequality can lead to social unrest, political instability, and even slower economic growth. It can make people lose trust in institutions and even democracy itself.
It sounds like a vicious cycle.
In a lot of ways it is. Rising inequality can create a situation where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, making it even harder for those at the bottom to get ahead.
So what can we do about this? Is there a way to break this cycle and create a more equitable society?
It's going to take a multi-pronged approach. Policies that promote inclusive economic growth, strengthen social safety nets, and invest in education and training. But it also requires a change in mindset, a recognition that a more equitable society is not only morally right, but it makes economic sense too. When everyone has the opportunity to succeed, we all benefit.
Okay, so we've discussed the shift in global economic power, the accelerating pace of technological change, the increasing interconnectedness of the world, the growing importance of sustainability, the changing nature of work, and the rise of inequality. Are there any other long-term trends we should be thinking about?
Another major trend is the changing demographics of the world. We're seeing aging populations in a lot of developed countries and growing youth populations in many developing countries. These demographic shifts are having a big impact on everything, from labor markets to healthcare systems to economic growth.
One source talked about the challenges of supporting an aging population when the workforce is shrinking. It's a big concern in countries like Japan and Germany, where the birth rate is low and people are living longer.
It definitely puts pressure on Social Security systems and healthcare spending, but it also creates opportunities.
What kind of opportunities? It sounds like a pretty tough situation.
Well, think about the growing youth population in a lot of developing countries. This is a huge pool of potential talent and energy. If these countries can harness this, what's called a demographic dividend, it could lead to a new era of economic growth and innovation.
So it's about turning these demographic challenges into opportunities. Are there any examples of countries doing this successfully?
Several countries in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam and Indonesia, have done a good job of leveraging their young populations to boost their economies by investing in education and making it easier to start businesses.
It's inspiring to see how demographic shifts can actually lead to positive change. But looking ahead, there are also some potential risks to consider. One source mentioned that geopolitical risks are a major concern.
Yeah, geopolitical risks, things like political instability, conflict, and terrorism are becoming more prominent in a world that's more interconnected and interdependent than ever before.
Yeah.
The war in Ukraine and the tension between the U.S. and China are prime examples of these risks, and they're already affecting global markets, supply chains, and energy prices.
It definitely creates a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability. How can we even plan for the future when these kinds of things can happen so suddenly and have such widespread consequences?
It's definitely a challenge. But businesses and investors are trying to figure out how to navigate this new landscape of increased geopolitical risks. And it's not just traditional military conflicts we need to worry about.
What else is there? I thought wars and terrorism were the main geopolitical risks.
We're also seeing the rise of non-state actors like terrorist groups and cybercriminals who can cause a lot of disruption and damage. And the spread of weapons of mass destruction is still a major concern, with the potential to cause catastrophic damage and destabilize entire regions.
It sounds pretty scary. Are there any effective ways to reduce these types of risks?
It takes a combination of diplomacy, deterrence, and resilience. We need to strengthen international institutions, build alliances with countries that share our values, and invest in our own security and defense capabilities.
It sounds like we need to work together more to solve these global problems, recognizing that these issues go beyond national borders and need coordinated action.
Exactly. In an increasingly interconnected world, we need to find ways to cooperate and coexist peacefully, even when we disagree.
Speaking of cooperation, it seems like the role of government in the economy is a hot topic these days. Some sources said that governments need to be more active, while others think government intervention can stifle innovation. What are your thoughts on this?
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. We've seen governments become more active in recent years, especially after the pandemic and the 2008 financial crisis.
One source mentioned the huge stimulus packages and bailouts that governments around the world use to prop up their economies.
Those actions had a big impact on markets, businesses, and individuals, and it raised questions about what role the government should play in a globalized economy.
So is there a right answer? Should governments be more hands-on or hands-off when it comes to the economy?
The best approach probably depends on the specific situation and the type of challenge we're facing. What's clear is that governments are playing a bigger and bigger role in shaping the global economy, and businesses, investors, and individuals need to pay attention to that.
So staying informed about government policies and regulations is really important for making good financial decisions.
Absolutely. Governments have a big influence on the economy through their policies on everything from taxes to trade to education.
Speaking of education, one of the sources talked about the importance of human capital. They emphasized investing in education, training, and lifelong learning so that people have the skills they need to compete in the global economy.
In a knowledge-based economy, human capital is becoming the most valuable asset. Companies are competing for talent, and those with the best educated and most skilled workforces are often the ones that succeed.
It's not just about having a strong economy, it's about having a smart economy, one that invests in the people who will drive innovation, productivity, and economic growth for years to come.
Exactly. We're moving away from a world where physical labor was the main driver of the economy to a world where knowledge, skills, and creativity are the key ingredients for success.
And that leads us to another important trend, the growing importance of innovation. The ability to create new products, services, and business models is more important than ever in a world where technology is changing so fast and competition is global.
You're absolutely right. Companies that can innovate and adapt are the ones that do well, while those that fall behind risk getting left behind. One source talked about how important it is to create an environment where new ideas can flourish, what they called an entrepreneurial ecosystem.
They mentioned needing access to capital, talent, infrastructure, and supportive regulations. It also takes a culture that values risk-taking and sees failure as a chance to learn.
Innovation isn't just about having great ideas. It's about creating a system that supports those ideas and helps them grow so they can contribute to economic growth.
So it's a team effort with governments, businesses, and individuals all working together to create an environment that encourages and rewards innovation.
Exactly. And this connects to another trend that's shaping the future of the global economy, the increasing importance of data.
You mean all that information that businesses, governments, and people are generating? I know data is a big deal these days, but how is it affecting the economy?
Data is becoming a key driver of economic growth and competitiveness. Companies that can collect, analyze, and use data effectively often have a big advantage. Think about the rise of big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. These technologies help businesses make better decisions, personalize products and services, and automate processes.
But it's not just businesses using data. Governments are using it to improve public services, track diseases, and fight crime.
And people are using data to manage their money, track their health, and connect with friends and family. Data is becoming more and more a part of our lives, changing the way we live, work, and interact with the world.
It's amazing how data has become this powerful tool, shaping everything from business decisions to government policies to our daily lives.
The power of data is undeniable, but we need to use it responsibly and ethically. We have to make sure people's privacy is protected and that data isn't being used to manipulate or exploit anyone.
That's a really important point. As data becomes more integrated into our lives, it's crucial to talk about how to use it ethically and responsibly.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another key trend that's often overlooked, the increasing importance of trust.
Trust, you mean like businesses, governments, and individuals trusting each other. Why is that so important for the economy?
Trust is the foundation of a healthy economy. When people trust each other, they're more likely to do business, invest in companies, and work together to solve problems. But we've seen a decline in trust in recent years, driven by things like the rise of populism, polarization, and misinformation.
Those trends are definitely eroding trust and making it harder to address our shared challenges. How can we rebuild trust in a world that seems increasingly divided?
It takes transparency, accountability, and ethical behavior. Businesses need to be honest with their customers, governments need to be accountable to their citizens, and individuals need to treat each other with respect and empathy.
It sounds like a lot to ask, especially in today's world.
It's challenging for sure, but not impossible. Trust is fragile, it needs to be nurtured and protected, and we all have a role to play in rebuilding it.
Okay, so we've covered data, trust, the changing role of government, the importance of human capital. What other big themes are shaping the future of the global economy?
Another key theme is the increasing importance of resilience, being able to adapt to shocks and disruptions.
We already talked about resilience when we discussed the pandemic and economic cycles, but how do we build resilience in a world that's becoming more volatile and unpredictable?
It involves building diverse supply chains, strong financial systems, and good social safety nets. But resilience is also about mindset.
What do you mean by mindset? I thought resilience was about having the right resources and infrastructure.
It's also about having a positive outlook, being willing to embrace change, and being ready to learn and adapt. It's about having both the resources and the mindset to deal with the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century.
So it's not just about bouncing back from setbacks, but also seeing change as a chance for growth and learning.
Exactly. Resilience is about seeing challenges as opportunities for innovation and growth. And that's becoming a really valuable quality in today's world.
Okay, so we've talked about resilience, trust data, and the changing nature of work. What other trends are shaping the economic landscape?
Another trend that's gaining momentum is the increasing importance of purpose.
Purpose. You mean like having a mission or a sense of meaning that goes beyond just making money?
Exactly. In a world where people are looking for meaning and fulfillment in their work, purpose is becoming a key driver of engagement, productivity, and innovation.
One of the sources talked about the rise of conscious capitalism and the growing interest in social entrepreneurship. It seems like people are realizing that businesses can be a force for good in the world.
And people are increasingly looking for jobs that align with their values. They want to feel like they're making a difference. They're more likely to be engaged and productive when they believe in what they're doing.
So it's not just about profits anymore. It's about purpose, about doing work that connects to something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And that's something businesses need to pay attention to if they want to attract and keep talented people in today's world.
It sounds like the old way of thinking about work is being challenged on many fronts.
It is. People are looking for more than just a paycheck. They want their work to have meaning and contribute to something positive in the world.
Okay, so we've talked about purpose, resilience, trust, and all these other trends that are shaping the global economy. What else should we be aware of as we look ahead?
Another important element is collaboration.
Collaboration? You mean businesses, governments, and individuals working together to solve problems?
Exactly. In a world that's becoming more complex and interconnected, no one can do it alone. We need to collaborate to deal with common challenges and seize opportunities.
One of the sources talked about how important it is to have partnerships between businesses, governments, and nonprofit organizations. They said that these partnerships bring together different perspectives, resources, and expertise to tackle tough problems.
These partnerships can also help build trust and understanding between different groups, which is something we've already said is essential for a healthy economy.
It reminds us that we're all connected and that our fates are intertwined.
It's exactly. Collaboration is key to building a more sustainable, equitable, and prosperous future for everyone. And this brings us to another important trend, agility.
Agility. You mean like being quick on your feet and able to adjust quickly?
It's more than just speed. It's about having a flexible mindset and being okay with things being uncertain. It's about embracing change as a constant and seeing it as a chance for growth instead of a threat.
One source said that the only thing that's constant is change, and the people who succeed will be the ones who embrace uncertainty and adapt to new situations.
Exactly. And it's not just about individuals being agile. Businesses need to be agile too. They need to be able to change their product, services, and business models to keep up with changing customer needs and market conditions.
It sounds like agility is about being ready for change and being open to the opportunities that change brings.
Exactly. The future belongs to those who are agile and adaptable.
Okay, so we've covered agility, collaboration, purpose, resilience, and a whole bunch of other trends shaping the global economy. What else is on the horizon?
Another important trend is creativity.
Creativity. I thought that was just for artists and musicians. How is creativity important for the economy?
It's becoming essential for individuals and businesses in a world where automation is taking over a lot of routine work. The people who will succeed are those who can think differently, come up with new solutions, and connect ideas that seem unrelated.
One source talked about fostering a culture of creativity where people feel safe to experiment, take risks, and challenge the way things are done. It sounds like we need to move away from a culture of conformity and embrace a culture of creativity.
Exactly. And that requires a shift in mindset, both individually and within organizations. It's about recognizing that creativity isn't just about art and music. It's about finding new ways to solve problems and create value in everything we do.
So creativity isn't just a nice-to-have skill. It's becoming essential in a world that's constantly changing and presenting new challenges.
Exactly. And it's a skill that we can all develop if we're willing to try new things and be more innovative in how we solve problems.
Okay, so we've covered creativity, agility, collaboration, purpose, and a lot of other trends that are shaping the global economy. What other key themes should we be aware of?
Another trend that's getting more attention is the importance of empathy.
Empathy. You mean being able to understand and share the feelings of others. What does that have to do with the economy?
In a world that's becoming more interconnected and diverse, empathy is essential for building relationships, encouraging cooperation, and creating a fairer society. One source talked about the importance of emotional intelligence, which is the ability to understand and manage our own emotions and the emotions of others.
I can see how that would be helpful for building relationships, resolving conflicts, and being a good leader.
Exactly, and it's becoming even more important as technology replaces more and more human interaction. As we spend more time looking at screens, it's vital to remember how important human connection and empathy are.
So it's not just about having technical skills and being adaptable. It's also about developing our emotional intelligence and empathy to navigate the increasingly complex human landscape of the 21st century.
Exactly. Empathy isn't just a nice quality to have, it's a critical skill for success in today's world.
Okay, so we've talked about the shift in global economic power, the fast pace of technological change, the increasing interconnectedness of the world, the growing importance of sustainability, the changing nature of work, the rise of inequality, the changing demographics of the world, the rise of geopolitical risks, the growing role of government, the increasing importance of human capital innovation, data, trust, resilience, purpose, navigation, agility, creativity, and empathy.
Wow, that's quite a list. The global economic landscape is clearly very complex and always changing.
It's a lot to take in, but it's also really interesting. Knowing about these trends helps us understand what's shaping our world and gives us the power to make better decisions about our lives and our finances.
Exactly, and ultimately that's what this deep dive is all about, giving you the tools to understand the complexities of the global economy and create a more prosperous and fulfilling future for yourself.
Wow, it's amazing how much we've covered in this deep dive. It's like all these different things, tech innovation, sustainability, the rise of China, they all come together in this big picture of the global economy.
It's a complex system for sure, but understanding these global trends and how they connect is so important for navigating the challenges and opportunities ahead, both for ourselves and for the world as a whole.
We've explored the forces shaping the global economy and dug into things like inflation, interest rates, and economic cycles. We even looked at real-world events like the 2008 financial crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic to see how global events hit our personal finances.
We also took a close look at China's economic model, that unique blend of government control and entrepreneurship, how their decisions can ripple across the world.
And along the way, we've uncovered strategies for building financial resilience, things like creating an emergency fund, diversifying income streams, making smart investments, and managing debt.
It's all about empowering you to take control of your financial future, even when things are uncertain and constantly changing.
It's like we've been given this roadmap for navigating the economic landscape and a toolkit to build a solid financial foundation.
Exactly. With that roadmap and toolkit, you're better equipped to make good decisions about your money, your career, and your future.
A lot of what we've talked about has really resonated with me, especially the importance of being adaptable, resilient, and a lifelong learner. Those qualities seem essential for navigating the complexities of the 21st century.
Absolutely. The world is changing faster than ever before, and those who can embrace change, learn from their experiences, and constantly evolve will be the ones who thrive.
It's exciting and a little scary at the same time. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway from all of this?
For me, it's how interconnected everything is. We've seen how events in one part of the world can impact everything else, from supply chains to financial markets to our own personal finances. It reminds us that we're all part of a larger system, and our actions have consequences beyond ourselves.
That makes me think about how important it is to not just focus on our own individual well-being, but to also consider the well-being of others and the planet as a whole. We're all in this together, and we need to find ways to work together to create a better future for everyone.
That's a really insightful point. It speaks to the importance of empathy, compassion, and a shared responsibility for the world around us.
Thinking back on all the information we've covered in this deep dive, what was most interesting to you? Was there anything that surprised you or made you think about things differently?
Honestly, I was really struck by the growing importance of purpose. It's fascinating how this idea is showing up not just in people's personal lives, but also in business strategies and even government policies. It suggests a shift in values, a growing recognition that success isn't just about money, but about making a positive impact.
It's like people are looking for a deeper sense of meaning and connection in their work and their lives, and businesses that align themselves with this desire for purpose seem to be connecting better with customers and employees.
It's definitely a trend to watch, as it could really change how we work, consume, and even govern ourselves in the coming years.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about and helped me connect the dots between global economic trends and my own financial goals. It feels good to understand the forces shaping the world and have the tools to navigate them.
That's exactly what we were hoping for. Knowledge is power. And by understanding these trends and developing the skills to adapt, you can create a more secure and fulfilling future for yourself.
As we wrap up this deep dive, do you have any final thoughts for our listener? Something to consider as they continue to explore and learn?
Absolutely. We've talked about being adaptable, resilient, and a lifelong learner, even embracing uncertainty. But I think there's one more quality that's essential for thriving in the future: courage.
Courage. That's interesting. Why courage?
Because the future isn't set in stone. It's up to us to create it. And creating the future we want takes courage. The courage to challenge the status quo, to take risks, to embrace new ideas, to stand up for what we believe in, and to make choices that align with our values.
It's about pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones, facing our fears, and daring to dream big.
Exactly. The future is in our hands, and it takes courage to grab the opportunities and overcome the challenges ahead.
That's a great message to end on. It reminds us that we all have the power to make a difference, to shape our own lives and contribute to a better world.
So to our listener, we encourage you to be curious, adaptable, resilient, courageous, and most importantly, be the architect of your own future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and are inspired to see the world with a fresh perspective.